I am Elara, and my story begins not with an affair, but with a piece of paper, a recurring $40,000 invoice from a high-end fertility clinic. My husband, Jax, a consultant, had turned our desire for a family into a quarterly business review of my body's deficiencies. He would leave that invoice. Always. Next to the antique French press, I used every morning, a silent reminder that my body was the primary hurdle in his perfect life, a $40,000 problem we couldn't afford. This financial obsession became the oxygen of our marriage, suffocating any warmth. For 3 years, our life was dictated by spreadsheets charting my reproductive system's failures against our dwindling savings. Each month, I'd wake to the heavy pressure of Jax's anticipation before the latest hormone results arrived. He never asked how I felt. He asked if I was optimistic about the capital expenditure this cycle. That language capital. Expenditure. Yield reduced the deep, painful longing for a child into a miserable business venture, and I was its failing CEO. He never yelled or blamed me directly, but his performance of disappointment was a masterpiece of manipulation. He would sigh heavily while scrolling spreadsheets that tracked my failed ovulation cycles, with columns meticulously named Elara factor, cost to date, projected return on investment ROI. The calculated exhaustion in his voice when he discussed my hormone levels was designed to make me feel not just broken, but selfishly expensive. Romance died around the third negative pregnancy test, replaced by cold efficiency and the crushing pressure of the financial burden. Jax was pathologically obsessed with the appearance of success, a living testament to his supposed mastery over life. One evening, after the latest IVF cycle had failed, I collapsed onto the kitchen counter, weeping into my hands. Jax didn't touch me. He simply handed me a glass of water and said, "It's unproductive to dwell on sunk costs. Elara, let's focus on the Q3 strategy." That moment defined everything. My pain was a sunk cost, and my value was tied only to a future strategy that could potentially succeed. I learned to stop crying, to stop feeling, and to present a polished, stoic front, because any vulnerability only triggered his condescending financial critiques. The unspoken rivalry between Jax and his older brother, Cassian, was the venom coating our marriage. Cassian, a venture capitalist in green energy, was everything Jax pretended to be: genuinely wealthy, effortlessly respected, and annoyingly successful. Jax saw Cassian not as a sibling, but as a living benchmark he could never reach. Jax's existence was a constant, exhausting attempt to mimic his brother's success, buying all the trappings without possessing an ounce of the substance. Jax wore a cheap, knockoff Rolex Submariner, a symbol he thought elevated him, but that only served as a ticking reminder of the authentic power his brother wielded. Cassian, by contrast, wore a simple field watch one morning. I accidentally knocked Jax's watch off the nightstand. The cheap casing shattered, revealing a plastic gear inside, a perfect metaphor for the man himself. His persona was a polished imitation of success, fragile and hollow beneath a thin layer of prestige. I collected the pieces, seeing him with clinical clarity, a fake trying desperately to keep up with the real thing. The surrogacy proposal came during Thanksgiving at my mother's house. The holiday was already stressful. Sienna, my younger sister, was there, looking thin and defeated. A talented artist. She was drowning in debt from her studio lease. She cornered me in the hallway, her eyes pleading. "I'd do anything for you, Elara," she murmured, clutching my hand. I knew she meant it. She was loyal to a fault, but desperately poor. That loyalty was exactly what Jax was counting on. Then, Jax intercepted. He and Sienna disappeared into the mudroom for 20 minutes, closing the door behind them. When they returned, Jax's eyes held a calculating glint, and Sienna looked both terrified and strangely relieved, like someone who had just signed over their soul for a reprieve. I knew instantly that Jax had used the financial pressure of her life against her, twisting her love for me into a transactional opportunity for him. Later that week, over takeout, Jax delivered his pitch with the detached clinicality of a corporate merger. "What if we did it the traditional way?" he asked, no warmth in his voice. He launched into an explanation about efficiency and cost savings, the $40,000 we'd save on IVF and legal fees. His proposal wasn't about love or desperation, it was a cost-benefit analysis where my sister was a zero-cost asset. He didn't stop there, he made it about my loyalty. Sienna is family. Elara, we keep everything internal. It's cleaner, simpler, less risk. Other wives would understand, he'd say. Comparing me to spouses who made uncomfortable choices for the good of the family, he presented it as my failure to see the obvious solution, my inability to accept the gift my sister was offering. He made me feel guilty for wanting to pay a professional, arguing that compensating Sienna would taint the purity of her gesture. Sienna called 2 days later, her voice unnaturally bright. She claimed Jax had explained everything, selling the arrangement as a selfless act of sisterly love, but she made a critical error. Jax said I'd get the money, the $40,000 on his next quarter payout date. She confessed, the money. It wasn't a sacrifice, it was a financial transaction, a secret payoff to clear her debt, tied to Jax's own income schedule. I hung up and stared at the countertop, realizing my desperation for a baby had blinded me. I was being sold a lie by the two people I was supposed to trust most. I saw the connection. Jax was outsourcing his paternity problem to save money, while giving Sienna just enough cash to stay indebted to him, guaranteeing her silence. The breaking point came the following Thursday. Jax was in Miami for a business retreat, a trip I knew he couldn't afford. I needed our property tax documents and went to his home office, a space as obsessively organized as his mind, a temple to his fabricated success. I found the documents, but as I closed the filing cabinet, my hand brushed against a thick folder shoved deep behind legitimate returns. It was marked in his tight script, legal sealed. My hand started shaking. The silence in the apartment felt enormous. I carried the folder to the living room and took a slow breath before opening it. Inside were two documents. The first was an NDA signed by Jax and a urologist 3 years before we married, confirming his diagnosis of azoospermia complete and irreversible sterility. He knew, through every doctor's appointment where I blamed my body, through every spreadsheet and painful procedure. He had known he was the problem. He had let me poison my body with hormones, endure endless examinations, and exhaust myself, all while knowing he was the reason for our failure. The betrayal was absolute, a biological and emotional fraud. The second document was worse. It was a contract of indebtedness, a high-interest loan for $500,000 from a private, unsavory lender, dated 6 months prior. The predatory interest rate implied Jax had no conventional financing options. The fine print, the chilling part, listed the Elara Vance Divorce Trust, my family's inheritance, accessible only upon my divorce as the sole, immediate collateral. The puzzle pieces clicked into place with horrifying clarity. Jax didn't need a baby. He needed time. He had to figure out how to steal from my trust before the debt came due. The surrogacy scheme was a complex smokescreen, a brilliant manipulation to keep me emotionally bound and legally married until he could empty my accounts. The clock was ticking. If I divorced him before the loan was repaid, the lender would seize the trust, dragging my family into his financial abyss. My marriage, I realized, was a ticking clock until I became the victim of a calculated financial extraction. I sat in his leather office chair, the smell of his cologne nauseating, and picked up my phone. I didn't call the police, too messy. I didn't call a lawyer, I didn't want a media circus. I needed someone who understood the system, whose integrity was as solid as Jax's was fraudulent. I called Cassian. He answered on the first ring, his voice calm and precise. "Elara, everything all right?" "No, Cassian, nothing is all right. Jax is sterile, he's sleeping with Sienna, and he's in $500,000 of debt with my family's trust as collateral. I need to talk to you now. Are you alone?" A heavy silence followed, one that spoke volumes about his awareness of his brother's dark side. Cassian wasn't just Jax's opposite. He was the measure of integrity Jax would forever fail. "Even for Jax, that's monstrous," Cassian finally stated, his calm tone resonating with controlled anger. I didn't need pity. I needed precision. I explained my plan, the vengeful partnership. I offered him the documents, the NDA, and the debt contract. In exchange, I needed his expertise to not just divorce Jax, but to destroy his credibility with the family business and the SIC, ensuring he would leave with nothing but the clothes on his back and the humiliation he deserved. Cassian didn't hesitate. He thinks he's better than me at everything, Jax had often sneered. Except for you, Elara. He thinks I married the right woman first. Cassian grasped the core of my revenge immediately. You want to prove he was wrong about that. 2. That I'm the better man, the better partner, even in destruction. I recalled a kindness from years ago when Cassian had quietly fixed a fraudulent investment Jax recommended to my father, saving our family a considerable loss. He was the silent investor in decency. I want him to pay a $500,000 consequence for seeing me as collateral, I said, my voice steady. And I want him to know you helped me deliver the bill. He played a financial game with my life. Now, we play a legal game with his. The plan was set in motion. Cassian flew in that weekend, renting a discreet loft downtown. We worked there, surrounded by my design sketches, my actual tangible work, a stark contrast to Jax's world of deceit. Our partnership was immediate and intense, built on mutual intellectual respect and a shared desire for ethical closure. Cassian, using his knowledge of corporate law and family finances, crafted a comprehensive divorce and financial misconduct report. This wasn't a mere divorce filing, it was a tactical strike. It included 2 versions, one for the court, detailing the financial fraud to protect my assets. The second, more damaging, was a dossier for his father and the corporate board, with irrefutable evidence that Jax's reckless borrowing and the collateral arrangement amounted to severe professional misconduct that could ruin the family name. He targeted your emotional weakness, Cassian explained, tracing a loophole in the debt contract. So we target his pathological need for our father's approval and his desperate fear of losing his status. While Cassian handled the legal framework, I handled the personal touch. I drafted an email to Sienna, attaching the NDA and the loan document. No message, just the cold facts the man who promised her $40,000 was broke, sterile, and using her as a shield. The goal was to ensure she was collateral damage, not a continued threat. When Jax returned late Sunday, exhausted and smelling of cheap bourbon, I was ready. I greeted him calmly, wearing a simple navy silk dress, looking every bit the composed wife he thought he owned. I made his favorite meal a seared ribeye, the one Cassian had taught me to cook years ago, and let him talk about his supposed successes, knowing every word was a lie. I played the part, smiling sweetly, silently counting down the hours. The confrontation came Tuesday evening. Jax was relaxed, basking in his supposed victory. He started talking about Sienna again, detailing their first traditional attempt. I listened patiently, then interrupted. I've been thinking about your practical solution, Jax, and I found a new partner. He leaned in eagerly, his face alight with the satisfaction of a manipulator. I found a new partner for the traditional method, I said, my voice soft. Someone who understands commitment, whose equipment actually works, and who would never use me as collateral for their own $500,000 failure. The blood drained from his face. He sat upright as Cassian walked from my design studio, dressed in a tailored charcoal suit, holding a leather briefcase. Jax stammered, his eyes darting between us, disbelief warring with terror. His valued composure evaporated into raw panic. What the hell is going on? Cassian stepped to the coffee table and placed 2 documents down. The first was the divorce settlement I had already signed, ensuring he'd leave with only what he brought into the marriage. The second was a single sheet, a confidential whistleblower letter to the board and the SEC, detailing his financial fraud and the use of my trust as illegal collateral, signed by me and notarized. Why so upset, Jax? I asked, picking up the NDA and dropping it onto the settlement. You've always been sterile. You've always been a fraud. The only thing you've lost is the timeline to steal my money, and the sister you paid $40,000 to keep quiet. The truth hit him like a physical blow. He stared at the documents, then at his brother, then me. His phone began to vibrate wildly, Sienna, no doubt, calling after I'd forwarded her the documents. She was finding out that the man she risked everything for was a broke, sterile liar. You've ruined my life, Jax whispered, his eyes blazing with impotent rage. You and him, always conspiring against me. No, I corrected, my voice ringing with clarity. You ruined your own life the day you decided my love was a cheaper asset than financial integrity. I just ensured the market corrected itself. You made an unsustainable investment. Jax, it failed? Cassian stepped forward, a figure of calm authority. Here's the deal, little brother, he said, his voice devoid of emotion. Elara and I are filing these in the morning. You sign the divorce papers, confess to the board, and step down quietly. That letter to the SEC stays private. You walk away free, but with nothing. You fight this, and I ensure that letter goes public. The loan sharks will be the least of your problems. Your choice. Jax was beaten. His fear of public humiliation and disappointing his father outweighed any desire for revenge. He grabbed a pen and signed the papers, his signature a shaky scribble. Then, he collected his few belongings, the fake Rolex, his cufflinks, his wallet, and walked out of my life forever. The aftermath was efficient. I filed for divorce the next morning, and the proceedings moved with the speed Cassian had promised. Jax's lawyer saw the evidence and advised him to concede everything. Cassian's strategic leaks to the family board meant Jax was pushed out of the firm before he could cause more damage, losing his job, his reputation, and the trust of his family. Sienna, initially defensive, finally understood Jax's game, the realization that she had risked her body and our relationship for a manipulative, sterile man broke her. She cut ties with Jax and came to me. I helped her restructure her studio debt and gave her space. Recognizing her betrayal stemmed from desperation, while Jax's was born of calculation. My relationship with Cassian didn't become a romance built on shared spite. We took things slowly, beginning as partners in damage control, then as friends who shared a profound understanding. He saw my strength and strategic mind. I saw his unwavering integrity and quiet capacity for care. He was the opposite of Jax in every way honest, successful without being showy, and deeply respectful of my intellect. He wanted to collaborate, not compete. Somewhere between the final divorce decree and long nights discussing my design business, our partnership evolved. We talked about legacy, ethics, and what true wealth meant. He invested in my firm, not as a controlling partner, but as a silent advisor who believed in my vision. I realized my desperate desire for a child had been less about motherhood and more about proving to Jax and myself that I was not the failure he labeled me. The fight for a baby was a fight for validation. With Cassian, I didn't need to prove anything. I was simply seen, valued for my mind and resilience, not my fertility. That was the validation I truly needed. 2 years later, Cassian proposed with a simple, solid platinum band, asking me to be his partner in life. We married in a quiet ceremony overlooking the Hudson. Small and meaningful, devoid of the performance Jax would have demanded. We never revisited having children. Instead, we established a foundation supporting female-led startups in creative industries, a legacy built on mentorship, investment, and the principle that integrity is the most valuable asset. Sometimes, working in my Manhattan penthouse, I look at the city lights and wonder if Jax, somewhere with his $500,000 debt, ever figured out that Cassian and I never needed to sleep together to destroy him. That his perfect brother did steal his wife, but only because Jax had already sold me as collateral the moment he used my trust as security. I wonder if he realizes his desperate need to compete cost him the only person ever willing to invest in him. But mostly, I don't wonder at all. I am too busy being happy, building a life of integrity with a man who taught me that the best revenge isn't getting even, it's recognizing your own value, cutting your losses, and making the smartest strategic investment of your life. I got everything my enemy never could: peace, respect, and a foundation built on truth.